Charlie, I'm going to start with you. Americans ran out the front doors of their homes and right back to work. It's in our blood. We want to work.
Turns out that they didn't like being quarantined all that much. But it really is sort of amazing to look at these numbers right now and to think about what a tremendous day it is for President Trump. And you look at this the entire first half of this year, so much of what we've been dealing with, whether it's the pandemic or the economy, it's all about predictions. And when you look at all of the predictions, all of these predictions that we've been getting have always been, suggesting demise for President Trump. And yet, you look at these numbers today, all of the predictions have been wildly wrong, and it is a truly tremendous day for America, but also for the president.
Dagan, in a shocking turn of events, the experts were wrong. Their estimations of what was going to happen and their numbers were massively off. I'm going to point to one piece of news that I particularly liked. I saw 73% of small businesses had reopened. I think Larry Kudlow said closer to 80%. Maybe he was rounding up a little bit, or maybe my number's just a little bit off. Either way, it is a big number. Small businesses, the lifeblood of our economy, of our country, the American dream personified, they are going back to work. What do you think?
They are going back to work, and with all due respect to my fellow Virginian Charlie Hurt, it isn't about President Trump. It's about the people who still don't have jobs and have not been called back to work. And not to throw cold water on this report, but if you look at a broad measure of unemployment and underemployment, people who want more hours and can't get them, it is still north of 21%. It is 21.2% of Americans aren't getting enough work or any work at all. So that is more than 1 out of 5 Americans who are in the workforce who need more work. That is what needs work. And I'm optimistic, and I think it's important for, quite frankly, everyone to be optimistic in this way, because caution and conservative behavior by businesses and by individuals and consumers, it can turn this slowdown into something that is very long-lasting if you aren't optimistic and don't encourage people. It's called hysteresis, where the things that cause this downturn go away, but it persists, because slow growth begets slow growth. So we have to encourage people to go back out there and get back on the job, particularly after those unemployment benefits, the extra $600 a week, those expire at the end of July.
No, absolutely. I mean, Dagan is right. Harris, I would say you can't talk down America. People, regardless of what's being said, they're going out the door, they're going back to work. She's right about all the people that still need to go. And that was one of the things that the president was addressing in the Rose Garden today, extending the terms on some of those PPP loans so that they're more usable to the small businesses. And now he's going to address the problem of restaurants, because those are people that need to go back to work. Your thoughts, Harris?
Well, my thoughts are still resting right now with what we've seen in the last 7 to 9 days with all of the peaceful protesting, but mixing in a lot of looting and a lot of violence. And I say a lot because we saw, most of it in downtown urban areas where some of these businesses were hit. And I look at Minnesota, Minneapolis as an example, and the governor there making the decision to reopen for outdoor seating on June 1st of this week, in spite of it all, saying that, we do have to get people back to work. We have to stay on a reopen schedule amid this coronavirus pandemic. I thought that was a really telling sign of where we are and where we can go. But protecting those small businesses, since we do know they hired before the pandemic, maybe even more after this, who knows, north of 66% of our working economy. So we do need to get those people feeling like they are supported after some of the destruction, the fires, what might ever have happened to their small business establishments. And I know that there are some dollars being set aside, some talk on Washington, but that's an immediate infusion, because these numbers, to my knowledge, Melissa and Dagan, do not account for the last, say, 96 hours or so of that destruction in the economy.
No, absolutely not. And in fact, the president said that what needs to happen now is to focus on those vulnerable areas, that's exactly where our attention needs to go, since so much of the rest of the country is coming back. He said now we have to focus on those spots that have been hit the hardest. He also said policy matters, in
100%.
short. Listen to this.
The only thing that can stop us is bad policy. Frankly, left-wing, bad policy. Polls that I've seen and the polls that we do are looking very good. But if we didn't have the possibility of having massively higher taxes like the Democrats want to do, and Green New Deals, which are totally ridiculous.
Marie, you want to respond to that?
Yeah, Melissa, I actually want to pick up on something you said earlier, which is talking about some of these government programs that have kept many small businesses partially afloat during the coronavirus pandemic. A lot of these programs are running out or are ending. And as Dagan mentioned, unemployment benefits also will be ending without an extension at some point. So economists are really looking into, underneath these surprisingly good numbers that we're all very happy to see, how much of that is accounted to the fact that there was an infusion of cash and support from the federal government. And there's a debate right now about extending these programs or about a stage 4 recovery package. And so I really want economists to look at how much we still do need despite these numbers, because as Dagan mentioned, there are still a lot of people out of work. There are still really bad numbers, for example, with black unemployment that came out this morning. And we can't separate these things out from what's happening in the streets. The economic uncertainty so many people continue to feel is part of what is, particularly in minority communities, part of what is driving so much anger and frustration in the streets. So we can't divorce the two from each other as we decide what policies the federal government particularly should be pursuing over the coming months to help keep this recovery going.
Melissa, may I step
Absolutely.
in and just address?
And wait, no, because I want to take it to Dagan for a second, because I want to address specifically what Marie just said. Because having studied economics at Harvard myself, I respectfully disagree with what she just said. And Dagan, I think by extending these policies, a lot of the economists I have spoken to think that an extension of these things beyond, she said, unemployment running out, and on the federal level, that would be July 31st, actually hurts people returning to work, hurts the minority community, hurts the economies that are trying to recover, because people then don't go out and seek a job immediately. What are your thoughts?
Anecdotally, I've talked to business owners who can't get people back on the job, and these are people that they train them because they're making more right now on unemployment than they were being paid. First. Secondly, the typical worker right now on unemployment is earning more than he or she had been at work because of the enhanced benefits and the stimulus checks. It's an extra $600 a week. That's a lot of money. The Congressional Budget Office, to Marie's point, in a letter to members of Congress on Thursday, and this is in the Wall Street Journal, estimated that expanding these enhanced jobless benefits through January of next year, which is what the Democrats in the House voted for, would mean that 5 in every 6 claimants would make more money from unemployment insurance than from work. If you extend them, we will not get this economy back on its feet. People like work. They enjoy work. They find reward in it. But you cannot extend these enhanced benefits beyond when they expire.
We're Americans. We like to work. Thanks, guys.